Scientists say antibody testing may eventually be a key tool in the fight against COVID-19. There was encouraging news on that front this week. Researchers said that antibodies found in a patient who had the coronavirus connected to SARS 17 years ago were able to neutralize COVID-19. Still, many questions remain about the effectiveness of antibody testing and what a positive test means for immunity. John Yang has the story.
Around the world, an increasing demand for antibody tests as people try to find out if they've been exposed to the coronavirus.
I'm going to get an antibody test.
Patrick Easley was tested in Chicago.
My thinking was if I got the antibody test and if it came back positive, then that means that I'd already had COVID and it had already gone through my system and that I should be A-okay-ish.
In West Texas, Coyne Gibson drove 3 hours to get tested.
My rationale comes from my science and engineering background, and that, knowing is better than guessing.
Sarah Curitan said she was the sickest she's ever been in mid-January and was surprised when her antibody test was negative.
The question has changed from, did I have it? Can I help someone? To how accurate is that test?
That's the question even scientists are asking. Gigi Quick-Gronval is a senior scholar at the Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security.
There are a lot of things we don't know about the antibodies. It's not the simple black, white, yes, no, go, no, go type of decision-making tool that I think people want it to be.
Antibodies are a crucial part of our immune system. They attach to viruses or virus-infected cells and ideally neutralize them, helping our body remove them. Testing for antibodies is different from testing for the virus itself. Antibody tests rely on a blood sample. A positive result indicates exposure to the virus and an immune response to it, even if you never have symptoms. Or at least that's the goal. These tests, especially for a new virus like COVID-19, can be wrong.
Somebody may get the information that they've been exposed, and then they think, oh, I'm good to go. And then it turns out they were actually vulnerable and they could get sick themselves and then transmit it to others.
In March, under pressure to quickly ramp up testing, the Food and Drug Administration allowed manufacturers to start distributing tests without confirming their accuracy. The market was flooded with more than 150 of them.
It was kind of a let 1,000 flowers bloom strategy, and that led to a lot of tests being less accurate than advertised.
Earlier this month, the agency began requiring that test makers prove their products are accurate or risk having them pulled from the market. But even if every antibody test was completely reliable, that wouldn't tell us much about immunity. That's because scientists don't know yet if antibodies protect someone from getting COVID-19 again. So who should get an antibody test right now and why? What's the right reason somebody should want to get an antibody test?
I don't fault people for wanting to know if that terrible, terrible sickness they had a couple of months ago, if that really was COVID-19. But I just hope that people understand the limitations of our knowledge.
Even so, doctors across the country are making tests widely available.
It's important, and we are opening it up to anyone who wants it. People are going to say, you're over-testing. You are over-testing. But we're not. We're screening.
We do, rapid flus with that we know that they're not perfect. Rapid strep tests, they're not perfect. But it helps better inform the patient and it helps people make decisions for their own lives.
Stanford University bioethicist Hank Greeley sees it differently.
I think the tests are not good enough to be pushed for almost all of them. And people don't need them at this point. If there are good tests, they should be used for important scientific research.
Studies from California to Massachusetts have tried to use antibody tests to draw conclusions about the prevalence of the virus. In New York City, researchers estimate that 1 in 5 residents was likely exposed. And researchers recently announced results from what they called the first nationwide antibody study. They tested about 5,600 Major League Baseball employees. The result, an estimated positive rate of less than 1%. One of the study's lead researchers, Daniel Eichner of the Anti-Doping Sports Medicine Research and Testing Laboratory, urged caution when looking at the data.
We're just looking at people employed by this one company, and so we got to be careful before we extrapolate out to the whole nation on that one. It's a very good study, and it's really good data, but I think the infection rates are going to vary throughout the country, and they will also vary through different population and demographic areas for sure.
Some hope antibody testing could eventually lead to so-called immunity passports. Those with immunity would be allowed to end social distancing measures. But the World Health Organization said there's not enough evidence for that yet. And even if there was, Stanford's Hank Greeley said, there are ethical questions.
In a sense, it almost could lead to a kind of apartheid, where some people are allowed to do some things and others aren't. If we had a thoroughgoing immunity certificate system, and it lasted very long, I think there'd be a lot of public discontent because people would say, look, that's not fair. And they would be right.
So for now, the advice from most experts is the same. Stay the course until more is known. For the PBS NewsHour, I'm John Yang.
On Thursday, the FDA did move ahead with its crackdown on antibody tests. Regulators published a list of more than 24 tests that should no longer be sold in the U.S. The FDA says that it will continue to add to the list as it learns more.